Hello, all you Elvis fans. This is Krista Joy, founder of TCBRadioNetwork.com.
And I'm your co-host of TCB Radio Network and Elvis tribute artist, Peter Alden. Welcome to the TCB Radio Network podcast. Get ready for some Elvis content and news you can use, where it's all Elvis, all the time.
Interviews with authors, Elvis fan club presidents, artists, musicians, and of course, close personal friends of Elvis Presley, people who knew him, the man himself.
Thank you for tuning in.
Now sit back, relax, and enjoy.
It's time for the TCB Radio Network podcast.
Hello, everybody. It is June 19th, 2018, and starting off the TCB Radio Network podcast tonight, we've got news for you on the 30th annual Marion Cock Elvis Presley Memorial Dinner, which will be held again this year, Monday, August 13th, 2018, at 7 p.m. in the Skyway Room at the Peabody, Memphis. Tickets are $90 or $35 for children aged 12 and under and are non-refundable. 3 consecutive monthly payments of $30 each may be made. The earlier you order your tickets, the closer to the stage you will be. Attire is formal or semi-formal. There will be special guests, a high-end gift raffle, live charity auction, and candlelight memorial service. If you lost a loved one this year and would like to carry one of the 41 candles for them, please give Lori their name to be put on the list. Your candle will be given to you at 6:30 p.m. in the elevator area at the Skyway. Details on how to get your tickets and more can be found at tcbradionetwork.com. Next up, we'd like to invite you to join us for a theater viewing of Elvis's 68 Comeback Special at AMC Disney Springs 24 Theaters on August 20th for the 7:30 p.m. showing. This is not the Fork and Screen Theater, it's just the regular one. And the address is 1500 East Buena Vista Drive in Lake Buena Vista, Florida, 32830. Remember, theme park tickets are never required to visit Disney Springs. And if you can't make our meetup, we've got some great news for you. Details on the film and getting tickets in your area can be found at tcbradionetwork.com. The movie is showing everywhere on both August 16th and 20th, 2018. And, of course, a great turnout for this showing all over the world could mean more Elvis films coming to theaters in the future. So come out, show your support, get your tickets, and catch the show either with us or in your area.
Since day one of launching TCB Radio Network, we knew we'd be incorporating meetups because we want to get to know you offline and in person. We're thrilled that this opportunity has come to us here in Orlando, and yet you can still catch the film no matter where you live. You'll want to park in Orange Garage for the shortest walk to the theater. The Disney Springs Movie Theater, or AMC Disney Springs 24, is located at Disney Springs West Side. Look for it near Splitsville and Bongo's Cuban Cafe and Nightclub.
Now, the only reason we're not going to the August 16th showing is because Peter actually has a show on August 16th. That's for another podcast. But we will be at the Inverness, the Citrus County Courthouse, doing a full Elvis production. Tickets are on sale now. You can check out peteraldenlive.com to get your tickets to this show. Actually, it's in the location where Elvis filmed Follow That Dream. So we'll be there on August 16th, and that is the only reason why we picked the August 20th showing of the 68 Comeback Special. There's some cool things we want to tell you about this theater, this particular theater that we're going to as well.
Yeah, the bonus is state-of-the-art THX surround sound and Sony Dynamic Digital Sound. We think the 68 Comeback Special at AMC Disney Springs 24 is going to blow your mind. The seats are spacious and cushy, perfect for a rest after a long day at work. Plus, the atmosphere inside the theaters is beautifully themed to the grand Art Deco movement for the 1920s, so you'll feel like going to the movies is really something special again. AMC Disney Springs 24 has upgraded one of their auditoriums to be the first enhanced theater experience in America. That means that the movie you'll see there have a big, huge, floor-to-ceiling screen, 12-channel audio, digital projection that is better quality than HD, and, of course, 3D capabilities. We sure hope this is the one where they will put Elvis.
And, of course, it feels a little extra magical to see a Disney film at Walt Disney World. Special thanks to Fathom Events for providing myself and Peter with complimentary media passes to enjoy the 68 Comeback Special. We'll see you at the movies. Now, if you just can't wait and you want to see Elvis on the high seas, we've got that for you as well. We want to invite you to join us for another sort of meetup that we'll be doing next year in 2019. We will be setting sail on the biggest and best Elvis and Friends cruise in April 2019. It's going to be a once-in-a-lifetime interactive vacation featuring 4 nights aboard Royal Caribbean's Enchantment of the Seas. Cruising with the King and Friends will be a treat for guests and a dynamic tribute to all eras of the most amazing career in music history. Guests will experience an exclusive look, sound, moves, authentic costumes of the King in rock and roll, and more. You'll get a VIP list of thrilling, standing room only tribute performances, themed parties and activities, meet and greets, photo ops, Q&A with the tribute artists, including those who knew Elvis himself, and more. We are so excited that Peter and I will both be on this cruise, and we hope you'll join us. Elvis and friends such as Marion Koch, Steve Bobbitt, who is the #1 Rod Stewart lookalike, Cynthia Pepper, who of course was Elvis's co-star in Kissing Cousins, and lots of Elvis tribute artists. It's going to be a ton of fun. Don't miss out on this opportunity. 4-night cruise sailing Port Canaveral, and we'll be on Royal Caribbean's Enchantment of the Seas. Now, again, you can get details on this cruise and how to book your cabin. Remember to mention code PA1 for Peter Alden 1, and that will get you a special gift from Lucky. Get a beautiful sparkly bracelet with Peter's name on it, and we'll know that you're there with Team Peter. It's going to be lots of fun, so be sure to check out tcbradionetwork.com and peteraldenlive.com to get details on how to book your cruise. The idea for the children's book had been Hal and Julie Lansky's for a while, and they wanted something to showcase the relationship that their father and grandfather had with a young man who would become the most famous entertainer of all time, the king of rock and roll, Mr. Elvis Presley. The result is one of my most favorite Elvis books of all time, named after a simple invitation to come into a store. Come On In, Young Man was written so that younger generations will continue to keep the influence of the legacy of Elvis Presley and Mr. Lansky's style upon that legacy alive. As you read along, you'll get the story of how a friendship can change your life and that hard work and confidence can make dreams come true. So without too much further ado, here's our interview with George Karalias and Keelan Parham. George Karalias is currently the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Elite Manufacturing. He is strategic and creative marketing professional with a span of diverse experience across industries and companies. He is the publisher of this fantastic book, Come On In, Young Man, and you can find him at KaraliasProductions.com. George, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And Keelan Parham is co-owner, vice president, and creative director at Artistic Talent Group. He is obviously an artist, cartoonist, model, actor, and interestingly enough, a former Elvis tribute artist. Find him at KeelanParham.com and ArtisticTalentGroup.com. Keelan, welcome to TCB Radio Network.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Now, Keelan, we're going to start off with you. As a former tribute artist, you're obviously an Elvis fan. When did you discover Elvis, and why do you like him?
Wow. This goes way back. I'm originally from South Carolina, although I live in Orlando, Florida now. But growing up, my dad was a worship leader in church, and I grew up in church. And when he wasn't doing that, he had a sound system in our house, and he would sing Blue Suede Shoes. So I always grew up with Elvis being around. My mom and dad were fans, so it was just in our culture in the South. I was born in 1967, so I was 10 years old when Elvis died. And I actually vividly remember it flashing up on the TV screen that he had died. And so even at 10, I had a pretty good realization of who he was and everything. So,
and how did that translate into becoming a tribute artist?
Oh, the paths we take in life. Yeah.
There was a bottle of Jack Daniels.
Somebody dared me.
Exactly. No, so I had always been an artist. I always wanted to draw, and wanted to draw comic books and everything. But after I went to art school in Savannah, Georgia, I started doing a little bit of modeling and acting. And I eventually found my way down to Orlando, Florida, and I fell in love with a girl. And she talked me into moving here. And so there wasn't a huge market for the modeling and acting back then here, and at least not for my age. I was 25, and, I looked about 18 back then. And so I had to do something. And I heard about, on a local radio station, I heard about a contest up at Flea World, a big flea market up in outside of Orlando here. And they were offering, I forget how much it was, but it was going to be about my half of the rent with my roommate that month. Mm-hmm. So I figured I had nothing to lose. So I entered the contest, and, turned out that I actually won it. And so I became an Elvis tribute artist by default, actually, after winning that contest. And, I was literally just doing it to make rent money. So...
I remember that contest. We won't talk about it anymore, Keelan. Thanks. Moving on now.
We gotta talk about this, though. We do have to talk about this. Just a second here. So I always liked the rockabilly look and everything. And the clothes, I wore a lot of black. I always have. I mean, I went to art school. So, I was able to do the early Elvis, look pretty well just from the clothes out of my closet. And I remember being at Flea World, and there were all of these professional Elvis impersonators. Well, that's what we call them then. Now we call them tribute artists. But they had their entourages. They had their scarf guys. They had all of this. And here I am, have never done any of this. And I just remember all the dirty looks I was getting.
Yeah, they were not happy with you that day.
They were not. They were not. And, that's actually where Pete and I met, was on that one. And we were, about the same age and everything. And I just remember of all the people there, Pete was the only nice guy. He really was. And, I knew a lot of Elvis songs, but I had not learned a lot of them all the way through, where I knew all the words. I literally had one song prepared for this contest, and that was Don't Be Cruel. And so blew me away as much as anybody else that when I actually won the contest, they started saying encore, encore. And I had no idea what I was going to do. I only really knew this one song. So, thank God Pete was so nice. And I don't know if you remember this, Pete, but you lent me your backup tape, because this is so long ago. We had, they were cassette tapes.
Yes.
Okay?
Oh, yeah.
You lent me your backup tape to Teddy Bear.
Yeah.
And so I kind of flubbed my way through the song and everything. I didn't know all the words to it, but I kind of knew it. And so I always remember that, that.
But his shirt was unbuttoned all the way down too, so you weren't really listening to the words.
No, it was not. But yeah, so I did Elvis for a little while there, probably about a year off and on. And I was already working some Ricky Nelson and Roy Orbison and Conway Twitty tunes into the sets when I would do it. And I never had any aspirations of being a tribute artist. I really didn't. But I just loved Elvis. and I could sound like him. So, but that's a whole lifetime ago now.
I love that story. We got to have you back on for the Peter Alden talk show. Because
that'd be great. I'd love to.
That would be so cool. Thanks for sharing all that. But I wanted to get back to the book. So, George, can you tell us, I mean, both of you guys had such a huge role in this awesome book, which has become my favorite thing in the world at the moment. But George, can you talk about how the process goes? How did this book come to be?
Yeah, well, I'll give you a little background of why I was in the right place at the right time to find out about this project. Both Keelan and I are members of the National Cartoonist Society, and every year we have an awards weekend, kind of like the Oscars for cartoonists. And we get together in different cities, and, despite my official sounding title in the quote-unquote real world job, I've been a cartoonist since I was a kid and did cartoons for local newspapers and did animation for video games back in the day and did all kinds of different art projects as well as illustrations and that sort of thing, storyboarding. So I've had a lot of fun in my career, as well as having the serious side of, having to make money, as, I'm sure you all know.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
So at one of these Reuben Awards weekends, it was a couple of years ago, it took place in Memphis. And the whole weekend and all the events took place at the Peabody Hotel. And, of course, everybody knows how legendary that hotel is and the history behind the city itself as well as Elvis's history. And in my many projects that I was working on, one of them earlier that year was with Fred Mullen, who is a music composer. He's worked for Disney. In the past, he's worked with many different artists, and one of his claim to fame is composing the music for Friday the 13th, which is kind of cool, in my opinion.
Cool.
Yeah, so, we chat, we talk, we had several opportunities to kind of share histories, and I told him about the cartoonist weekend and the award ceremony and who's going to be there, and wow, it's going to be in Memphis. And he goes, you really need to look up a good friend of mine. And I said, okay, yeah, he's got a store in the hotel, and his name is Hal Lansky. And I said, oh, okay, all right, I'll write his name down, and, if the opportunity arises, then I certainly will, introduce myself. But, the weekend came along, and day after day, I'd be walking down the hallways and by the store and looking in and seeing the tremendously cool clothes and stopping in to just kind of window shop and be tempted to buy stuff that my wife would yell at me about. And, but the final day, I actually saw a gentleman in the store that resembled the description for Hal Lansky. And I said, all right, this is, I'm about to leave tomorrow, Sunday afternoon. I'll go in and introduce myself and see if it is indeed Hal. And sure enough, it was, and told him how I was sent to him through Fred. Fred and Hal are really good friends. They're in touch with each other all the time. He goes, oh, man, yeah. So we started talking, and he's showing me different things and talking about, the store's inventory and the history behind it and how his dad, Bernard, had befriended Elvis. And then he just kind of stops, and he goes, you're part of this cartoonist organization? And I go, yeah, it's, we have like this awards ceremony every year. And he goes, you guys have such a good time. I'm really jealous. I can't believe it. I'm just watching everything that's going on, and you're just having a nonstop good time the whole weekend. And I told him, yeah, that's pretty much our personality, and we are cartoonists after all. And so he said, I have a project that I've been wanting to do for years, and I'm wondering if, I can bounce it off of you and see what you think. And so we started talking about a book that highlighted his father and how he helped Elvis at the beginning of his career, and how Elvis had this personal confidence and this desire to follow his dream, and with the help of especially one friend, Bernard, but many friends, but Bernard especially, he was able to fulfill his dreams. And so we made an agreement to get on a conference call, the following couple of weeks or whenever it was. And so we started having phone calls back and forth, and I started to write the script of how the book would proceed. And we went through probably 2 or 3 different paths of how the book should play out. And we started by just text scripting, and then I started doing sketches and layouts, and I did further layouts, and we got to a point where we really had to decide on how the illustrations were going to get done. And I was thinking about a few different people to illustrate this, but Keelan was definitely at the top of my list. And I knew that he was an Elvis impersonator back in the day, and so how perfect would that be? So and his talent of caricaturing was key to this. And so, Keelan, can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we played around with a few different styles initially, just to do a run through with Hal and Julie, and just show them the direction of how it would go. And I think all of us pretty much were in tune that we wanted that 50s retro kind of scratchy looking artwork that Keelan just produced unbelievably. And so, to have the thing starting to come to life, and Keelan and I would work together in finding reference material, and then we'd be, putting things in different places, and I started arranging the pages and mapping out all the text as to where it would go. And I literally did the whole book myself in the Adobe InDesign program, which, years ago would be unheard of. You'd have to get a publisher to do it. So what Hal and Julie wanted to do is pretty much self-publish this and keep complete control of selling the book, and I was okay with that. And I essentially, made sure that we all of the right information and the UPC code and all of, registering the book, and it came out awesome. Better than I anticipated, but that's because we were pretty passionate about it, and we were all having a really good time doing it too.
Wow. How long was it from the time you talked to Hal in the store until the book came out?
Oh boy. I think it was, a year and a half.
Okay. That's pretty fast.
Yeah, I think
that's a pretty fast
right.
turnaround.
Yeah. Cause we met in May of, 2016.
Yeah.
And then it officially hit the streets in June of last year. Actually, it was on my birthday in June of last year that we actually made the announcement in the press release. So,
So Keelan, tell us about the artistic process on this. Tell us about what might have it been if it wasn't the way it is today with the scratchy drawings. What were the other styles that you kind of went through?
Well, to start off with, we knew it was going to be a children's book, and so I'm a big cartoon fan, obviously, animated cartoons, and so I had sent a couple of test drawings to George that were much more cartoon animated look and everything, but I really decided pretty early on that I either wanted to do that style or I wanted to do the style that it's in, that you see. So there weren't a wide variety of styles. It's just that I was, I'm a huge cartoon and illustration fan. And so there was a particular illustrator in the 1950s that did a lot of jazz records. His name was David Stone Martin. And he had a real scratchy line to his work. And so I knew that would give it kind of this retro feel. So, what I eventually landed up with was something that's slightly reminiscent of David Stone Martin's line, but then crossed with a cartoon look, so it would be more palatable for a children's book. So.
Yeah, and, if I could just chime in, we did at one point, at the very beginning, we talked about it being more comic book-like, and Hal and Julie really didn't want to go that route. I wasn't crazy about the idea in and of itself either, because I felt as though having it be a picture book, a traditional children's book, was far more, it looks more elegant, it looks more sophisticated in its current form.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, George, when you were talking with Hal and Julie about what they wanted, how long did it take to come up with that? As far as, how much of this did you present to them? Did you present this as it went, or you finished it all and said, "Is this what you want?"
No, we definitely went back and forth several times. I would write out a script. I would spend, an hour or two on the phone with them, and they would just do a brain dump of information about Bernard and his classic phrases that he used to use, and things that would give personality to the book.
Right. Now, the one thing I noticed in the couple of pictures, Keelan, you took some of the famous pictures of Elvis with Bernard and illustrated them. I thought that was
the $1 Million Quartet picture is so cool.
Yeah,
can you talk about that?
Yeah, I just thought that was because along with your original interpretations, you kind of illustrated some of the actual photographs that people have seen for years.
Right. And, that $1 Million Quartet thing, that was totally, that was your idea, wasn't it, George?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I really enjoyed doing that one. That was a lot of fun.
It was, I threw it across the bow to Hal and said, listen, if we can get away with manipulating this picture, it's perfect for this scenario. And so I kind of laid it out and I cut and pasted it a little bit from my own, viewing with photos. And I just loved it because everybody's position was exactly perfect. If you see the illustration, instead of being at a piano, they're looking at all the outfits and clothes and shoes and what have you. So
I know.
Cool.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's brilliant.
It's so cool.
Well, I'm actually a huge fan of the $1 Million Quartet play. I saw it on Broadway and everything. And so now I started posting some of the images from this book on my Instagram, and I've got a couple of followers. Like the $1 Million Quartet follows me now. The play does. Sun Studios follows me. I've got a couple of Elvises from the play who the traveling production who now follow me on Instagram, and I've gotten to be friends with. So it's been kind of cool, that whole angle.
That's awesome. We would just take things, and the other scene that I really liked was the story behind Graceland and the truck in the foreground, and how Hal would drive over to Graceland with entire, loads of clothes for Elvis to look at, and Elvis would just say, just leave the whole thing. He would just buy the whole truck's worth of clothing, and that would be it. He'd come back empty, so, and it's obvious, you take the historical actual images that you find in the different photos and you marry them together, and it tells a story in and of itself in the illustration, and the text just adds to the layers of information that you're getting on that page.
Yes, I love it. And the buying power of Elvis.
Yes.
We all just have that.
Yeah. If we could all just say, just leave the truck.
Just leave the whole truck. I'll take it.
Yeah.
You're listening to the TCB Radio Network podcast, where we're celebrating the life and memory of Elvis Presley with a mission to share his legacy with the world.
Hi, everybody. I'm Krista Joy, founder of TCB Radio Network, and I want to let you know that tonight's show is co-hosted and sponsored by PeterAldenEntertainment.com and PeterAldenLive.com. Peter Alden is a classically trained vocalist with a voice like velvet who performs everything from country to pop while specializing in the golden era of rock and roll. Based in Orlando, Florida, but able to travel all over the world, he can come to you. Please support TCB Radio Network by hiring Peter Alden for musical entertainment or to MC at your next event. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Peter Alden Fans.
Hi, everybody. I am Marian Cock, the official sex symbol on TCB Radio Network, where everything is about Elvis. It is all about Elvis.
I think all of four of us here have a background with Disney, so it's killing me. I need to know. There's so many little cute children's faces, and there's all these little faces of extras, and there's a concept in Disney they call the hidden Mickey, where the designers and the Imagineers will leave a little Mickey symbol that's hard to find, and just something later for us to go check out. Are there any faces, any of these people, are they anybody you know, or were any of them modeled after your kids or anything like that on any of these pages?
George, I'll let you have that one, George.
The four of the girls actually it's 4 or 5. I think 5 of the girls in on the page with all the children on it are Bernard's actual granddaughters.
Oh,
Wow,
I knew it.
okay.
I knew there had to be some in there. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, Krista's original thought was maybe it was one of Keelan's. I was
trying to pick which one was Keelan's daughter.
No, but I didn't put any in there, but there are some what I call you hear about it in the Marvel movies these days. They call them Easter eggs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I do have a few Easter eggs throughout the book. You know, I've got different clothes from some of the movies he was in that I've included. You know, I've got there's a scene where the Lansky family is watching the Ed Sullivan Show, and in Hal's hands I have a Captain Marvel Jr. magazine.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, right.
That just sent me over the edge when you did that. That was awesome.
Because as we know, Elvis was a huge fan.
Yeah,
of Captain
Elvis
Marvel
loved
Jr.
Captain Marvel. Yeah.
Yep, and there's a page in here. So let me say this: I've got 2 daughters, like you were talking about, and one of them is 19 and is an artist herself. And so I did get at one time, you think you have time with your deadlines, and then all of a sudden life happens, and you get really pressed for time. And so my daughter, Brady is her name, I had her do some of the basic flat coloring on a couple of the pages.
Okay.
And then I would go back in. She would, because I did them all digitally. That doesn't mean I don't have a program that draws.
Right.
I draw in a program on my screen. So I had her go in and flat color some things, and then I would go back and finish it. And so there's one page, I actually have the book open right now, where Elvis is in the Lansky store, and he's pulling out his empty pockets and everything. He's got no money to buy anything with. And my daughter snuck in a Charlie Brown shirt.
I know, I love that.
On the rack behind him. So I left that. I left a few things in there like that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, there it is, right in the front.
Oh, yeah, it's right in the front. Right in the front.
Yeah, she did it, and I'm like, Brady.
Yeah, but I mean, come on.
Funny.
This is
great.
the book is being done by members of the National Cartoonist Society, and, you know, Sparky Schultz is like a god to us. That's
right.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Now,
I'll never forget the day when there's like one of the early pages in the book too is when Elvis is first walking into the Lansky store, and we didn't exactly know at that point where where all the lettering, all the verbiage was going to go, and so in the program that I work in, you can put stuff on layers, so I can move stuff around.
Oh yeah,
on the screen, and so I literally had Lansky on a layer, I had the store on a layer, I had all of these different coat racks on layers. I spent a day like building a store on my computer. I really did.
And I spent a day taking it apart. So
he did.
Okay.
He did. I gotta say, this was, you know, I was so happy to do this interview because this really was a dream project. I mean, you know, growing up an Elvis fan, and I always knew about the Lansky store. I did. And I had always dreamed about being able to go during its heyday, you know, and see all of the clothes and everything. And then when I got the chance to draw this years later, and I got to do it with a really good friend of mine, I mean, it was crazy. You know, what a blessing.
And now I'm going to take your theme of dreams, and because I want to ask you, who had the idea, or how did you come up with the idea of taking it from just a children's book into a follow your dreams story?
That was the gist of what Hal and Julie wanted to do.
Oh, I love that.
Okay.
So, because we, you know, very early on, Hal referenced the follow that dream, you know, Toby's quote from the 1962 movie, you know, so that's why we put the quote in the book, and it really summarizes what it was that Elvis was living at that time. I mean, seriously, you know, he believed in himself, and fortunately he had friends that believed in him too.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And strangers. I mean, Mr. Lansky didn't know who he was. He was just a kid outside looking through the window, you know?
Yeah, it's like, you know, he's just walking, you know, just looking at the window, and Bernard is standing at the doorway. It's like, come on in. It's like, well, I don't have any money. Doesn't cost anything to look. Just come in and enjoy yourself. So
but you know, I tell you what, from being in that store, you're going to spend money in there because every time I go into Lansky Brothers, I'm like, oh, I got to have that jacket. I got to have that.
Even if we have to put it on 4 credit cards, you know, $25 on each card, we're doing it. Well, and I know you get asked this all the time, and I'm not sure how it would happen, but I mean, do you guys ever dream or think maybe there would be a second edition or a third edition of a Lansky Elvis book?
Well, believe it or not, that's a question I get asked all the time by people that look at the book and, you know, buy the book, or I give it to my relatives and they're asking, when's the next one coming out? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I just don't even know if that's going to happen. But it would be really cool to do a second edition, and I'm sure that at some point down the line we might consider it, and because there's a lot of material there. There's a lot of history, even if it involved the Peabody Hotel and some of the peripheral characters within Elvis's life, and some of the other stuff that went on during that time, and then bring in Bernard's, you know, I have a list of probably 100 different little snappy quotes that he used to say all the time, you know, to customers when they came in, and he'd have his own language that he would speak, and he was a consummate salesman, but he was truly a nice person, and so it was genuine. It wasn't, you know, hokey. He just, you know, I honestly, I never met Bernard in person, but my father, I grew up in, you know, working in a gas station with my father, and he serviced cars, and he was the best known mechanic in town, and he had those little sayings too. They were car related as opposed to clothing related, but
Right.
it was the same. It was that era of people that just they treated their customers like friends, and that's what happens. It's, you know, when you come in for an oil change and you spend 3 hours just talking to the mechanic while he's doing the oil change, that's a friendship. That's not just getting your car, you know, taken care of at Jiffy Lube. So, anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it really is sad because it really is a bygone era. And
Yep, for sure.
Yeah,
It is. You know, hey, George, I was actually just thinking about this, you know, thinking about the $1 Million Quartet page again. I mean, we could almost do a follow-up with some of the other people that bought clothes there at Lanskyand stores.
yeah. I know a lot of those
spin off like that.
Yeah, a lot of those guys from Sun Records came in and bought clothes.
That would be cool.
Yeah, I think the underlying threads of a second edition, it would have to include Elvis. It would have to include the Lansky's, and then everything else would tie in.
Yeah,
and
they dressed a lot of famous people, right?
Yeah, I know that Bernard dressed many, many famous people.
Oh, he did. Oh, definitely. And there's pictures. You know, I'm sure you guys have the coffee table books that Lansky put out, and there's just so many pictures.
Oh, it's crazy.
Wonderful stuff.
Well, and like you said, tying it back into Elvis, because I know a lot of, honestly, that's why I went in there the first time. I was like, this is where Elvis shopped. I want to go in there and get something, you know, where Elvis shopped. And I'm sure that all the celebrities, that was one of the underlying reasons why they probably went in there too.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Well, hey, you know, I got to say, I want to talk about something real quick, if you don't mind, about actually drawing Elvis.
Okay.
This was not as easy as I thought it was going to be.
And you told me that repeatedly.
Oh my gosh. There was a point where I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. But thankfully, you know, I didn't, and I made it through that. But, the problem is that Elvis is arguably one of the most recognized people in history. Okay.
Yep.
I've heard it said it's Elvis, Jesus, and Mickey Mouse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That anybody, anywhere, they know who it is if you show them the picture. Okay. And so it was a little bit daunting, actually. And when you look at pictures of young Elvis before he became the king of rock and roll, he looked considerably different than he did later on.
I agree.
You can see the seeds of it, but it wasn't all there. So I had to really decide artistically that I was going to actually depict him kind of how we all know he looked later, but he didn't exactly look like that in that time period. So that was a tough one for me. And I've, you know, in my quote unquote normal life, I've drawn caricatures at Disney for about 25 years. It was right after that Elvis contest I was in is when I started drawing caricatures. And so I look at faces a lot, you know. I've drawn hundreds of thousands of faces in this many years. So to draw this character, this person who is so recognizable and have him at different ages and do different expressions while still allowing the reader to know that it was Elvis just by looking at it was tough at times. It really was. And an added thing, and you know, this sounds weird. I mean, again, this is a whole lifetime ago when I'm talking about being the Elvis tribute artist for a while. When I was younger, I mean, yeah, some photos. I mean, you know, I had some facial similarities to Elvis. I mean, didn't look like Elvis, but you know, there were some similarities. And so there was a lot of times when I would be drawing this book, and I'm like, oh, man, I'm just drawing a cartoon of myself. I'm not drawing Elvis. And so that was tough too. And so while we were doing this book, I mean, I ate, slept, breathed Elvis.
Right.
I had to, pouring over all those old photos. So it was a fun challenge, but it was a challenge.
Well, and Keelan, I know that you've heard the phrase coming from the Elvis Troubadours world. We all, the saying is, we all look like each other, but none of us really look like Elvis. So.
Exactly. Isn't that the truth? That's the truth.
But honestly, that being said, I thought there are some pictures especially that are scary close.
Well, and I'm just now noticing that because Elvis's eye color changed. I've seen pictures of him not retouched. I don't know how this is, but sometimes his eyes are really brown and sometimes they're really blue. And Keelan, you've drawn him both ways in this book. It's so cool.
If I did that, I didn't even know I did that.
You didn't even realize you did it. You did. You absolutely did.
No. Keelan, the answer is supposed to be, yeah, I planned it that way.
Yeah, I planned it that way.
Not only did he draw his face, but then he also has a page where they're all holding pictures for him to autograph. So he drew a drawing of his face, too, or a photo of his face. It's just amazing. The detail's incredible. You did a great job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and honestly, you really captured Bernard, too.
And there weren't a lot of photos Bernard to work from.
No, so. there aren't, but you really captured Bernard Lanskyand.
Yeah,
yep.
Fantastic.
That went back and forth a couple of times too. I know that Keelan, you definitely, you went above and beyond to just get it right in portraying Bernard too. So kudos to you for that as well.
Yeah, because it could have very well easily been a book where the Elvis looks magnificent, but everybody else is kind of in the background, and there's nothing but your attention to detail in all aspects of these photos is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, guys. It was, like I said, it was a pleasure to work on. It really was.
So, George, is it true that the only place you can get the book is on the Lansky website? It's not on Amazon or anything else?
No, it's not on Amazon. It is available at all their stores in Memphis as well.
Okay, so you got to get it on the website or in the stores. And then, so that leads me to my next question. We want to give you some shameless plug time. So, George, tell everybody your websites and where they can follow you on social media.
Oh, my goodness. Well, the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. That's like a really thorough history of what I've done. But I just wanted to mention one really cool project that I'm working on right now that just once again brings together my cartooning world and the work that I do there and the electronics industry, which I've been part of forever, computers and everything else. And my company is actually building the electronics and engineering the functionality for the official licensed Dick Tracy watch.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh
yeah,
gosh.
And so it's essentially going to be the, Apple Watch for the rest of us that we've been waiting for since the 30s.
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
I love that. Yeah. I love that.
If anybody wants to go check it out, it's the website is literally dicktracy.watch.
I am going to check it out because I love Dick Tracy.
And if you go on Facebook, there's also a page there, and we just created a new video with the latest demo of the watch, and we're going to be there. Are actually my friends that are spearheading this whole thing. They're in Connecticut. They'll be launching the Indiegogo campaign for it that will kind of give the first 1,000 people like first dibs on the watches when they finally come out with all the bells and whistles.
Now, did I read somewhere you're working on another children's book as well?
Yeah, I've got a couple of books that I'm working on. One of them is with my daughter, and it's just they're so at the beginning stages that I don't even want to reveal anything about them. But if anybody, I will probably be announcing them on LinkedIn as well as Facebook. I usually put on posts, but people can follow me on Instagram or Twitter. I usually I don't do Twitter too much, but I do make announcements on there. Yeah, so that's pretty much.
You're like me. I think you're just like me, where I'm just involved in so many things. So while Keelan's talking, if you think of something else, you definitely let us know.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Keelan, your turn. Go ahead and it's time for shameless plug time. So go ahead and tell everybody about your fantastic website and what you do. This is so interesting.
All right. So if you remember at the beginning of this interview when I talked about needing money when I first moved down here is how I started doing Elvis. And it was to go out with a girl. Well, I have been married to that girl for almost 25 years now. And she is the real brains behind me. We've got a website called artistictalentgroup.com. My wife, Barbara, is a licensed talent agent here in Florida. And we represent artistic acts for theme parks and conventions and live events. So we've got about 35 different kinds of art acts we offer. Everything from caricatures to face painting to just all kinds of stuff. Like I said, she's the brains behind it. I've got artistic ADD, so I'm always coming up with new things. Then we promote them for events and everything. So that's the main business that we've got. One arm of that is my whole freelance illustration thing. And then I am also on Instagram a lot, and that's Keelan Art is my name on there.
And then there's also another little dirty little secret that Keelan neglected to tell the audience about.
What is that?
Oh dear.
This is the Universal Studios created it was like a fake dating game show.
Oh yeah.
And it wasn't to really go out on dates, but it was three clowns trying to get a date with a girl, or three undertakers trying to get a date with a girl, and this was three Elvis guys. And it was myself, Keelan, and there was a local radio DJ here in Orlando who went by the name of Elvis Gorbachev.
Right,
and,
I forgot that.
And he was on 105.9. So we were set up to do this fake dating game. We're back getting ready to go on, and this beautiful blonde girl comes up. And she wishes us all good luck, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a great time. And then she plants one right on Keelan, and he's like, oh, yeah, that's my girlfriend. And so I looked at Elvis Gorbachev, and I said, well, I think this will be the second time that I lose to Keelan, because I have an idea who she's going to pick at the end of this thing.
Wow. Oh, my gosh. What a long time ago that was.
That is fantastic. These are the things only on TCB Radio Network that you'll find.
That is hilarious. George probably doesn't even know this. So a couple of years ago, I heard that, I actually saw you, Pete, at an event that I was drawing at, didn't I?
Yes.
Yes. And you told me that you were going to be performing locally at a club here in town in a couple of weeks. So I went out there with my wife and my girls and everything, and to watch Elvis. And I think this is when I met you too, Krista, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so I was just there to just watch and to lie low, and enjoy.
That's
Pete
not going to happen.
That wasn't going to happen.
And Pete called me up on stage to sing, not knowing that I had my ace in the hole, which was my daughter, who can sing rings around me.
Yes, she was fabulous.
And so she did a great job up on stage. But I think she was 8 at the time. So wow.
Yeah, she did a great job. It was funny because he brought her up with him, and I said, "Okay, now do you know Hound Dog?" He goes, "Hound what? I don't sing really anymore, but my daughter does. She can do it."
Yep. We've got the whole thing still on our YouTube channel. So if you want to see Keelan's daughter singing, just look it up. I'm going to put a link in the show
You might
notes.
see it on Facebook Live when we broadcast this.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Well, bonus footage right there.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, with that, I'm going to wrap up the interview. I want to thank you guys so much. Keelan and George, thank you for being with us here on TCB Radio Network. We so enjoyed talking to you. Thank you for this beautiful book, Come On In, Young Man, available at Lansky Brothers stores and also on their website. Thank you guys so much.
Yes, thank you both. We really appreciate all your time.
Thank you, guys. This was a lot of fun.
It was, yep. Thanks for having us.
Wow, Pete, I gotta say, that was one of the most fun interviews we've done to date yet. I think it was super cool getting all that backstory on you and Keelan. And
yeah, who knew back then? Who knew back then what was gonna happen? But once again, for those of you listening to TCB Radio here, you got a chance to hear the entire interview all at one place. We will be airing part 2, of course, in the coming week on Facebook Live.
Yes. So the fun part about Facebook Live is you get to see Peter's awesome videos that he puts together with all the photos. And so as the interview goes, you can actually watch the pictures. But we're breaking up Facebook Live into 2 parts. But you guys over here on the podcast, you're getting the interview all in one. So we're so glad you tuned in with us today. Be sure to rate us and review us on iTunes. And that'll help other Elvis fans to find us as well. And don't forget, you can catch the shows also on player.fm as well. So the next portion of the show, of course, we would be remiss if we didn't mention the loss of DJ Fontana, Elvis's original drummer, who sadly passed away this week. DJ Fontana was Elvis's drummer for 14 years and played on over 460 RCA cuts with Elvis. He began his incredible career as a staff drummer in 1953 on the famous Louisiana Hayride. And while working with the Hayride in 1954, DJ met Elvis. They formed a common bond of friendship and admiration for each other's immense talents. DJ Scotty Moore and Bill Black formed Elvis's original band. DJ was the man behind the beat for the first 14 years of Elvis's career. DJ and Scotty Moore received the Nashville Music Award for the Best Independent Album of the Year in 1998 for Going Back to Memphis from their CD All the King's Men. DJ and Scotty were also nominated for a Grammy in 1998 for their CD All the King's Men. DJ has appeared in tons of movies. For Elvis, he was in Loving You, Jailhouse Rock, King Creole, G.I. Blues, and also television shows like Nashville, the Dorsey Brothers stage show, the Milton Berle show, Conan O'Brien, and so many more. Ed Sullivan, the list goes on and on. Frank Sinatra show. DJ, again, played on approximately 460 RCA cuts with Elvis. He also played with many other great artists like Paul McCartney, Carl Perkins, Cheap Trick, and many, many more. The great thing, too, that I really love about having a fantastic co-host such as Peter Alden is that he has so many wonderful stories about a lot of these people that Elvis worked with and knew. And he's got some great stories about DJ Fontana that you're not going to hear anywhere else but here on TCB Radio Network podcast. So I wanted to give him a chance to tell us a couple of those stories. Now, Peter, you met DJ through his son David Fontana, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And can you tell everybody about your relationship with David, how you guys met?
Yeah, well, I met David up in Nashville. I was doing a show with my friend Brian McCullough. We had co-written a show together called Elvis and Roy, The Lost Concert, about a concert with Elvis and Roy Orbison together on stage. It's something they had talked about. It had never happened. And David was the musical director and drummer for that show. So I met him through that. We got to be really good friends and talked a lot about Elvis and some of the things that were going on. And as we moved forward with the show and it continued to go, we got a chance to meet some of Roy's musicians, some of his original musicians. And about this time, I was starting to inquire with David, was your dad ever going to come out? But DJ was on the road quite often, and so it just depended on the time that he had. And but he finally had some time. He came out and saw our show. Was very, very complimentary. Gave us a nice blurb for our poster that we used in promotions from that point on, and signed quite a few posters for us. About a year or so later, we were back in Nashville, and we were doing a revival of Elvis and Roy, and came to the time where Elvis comes on stage and he asks, does anybody know Blue Suede Shoes? And everybody in the band is supposed to say, yeah, we know that one. And Dave said, no, I don't really know that. I didn't really listen to all that kind of stuff, but I know a guy who does. And at that time, he brought his dad out, and his dad came out on stage. I was flabbergasted because I was certainly not expecting it. So, but we did Blue Suede Shoes, and I think it kept him out there for 3 or 4 more songs. Wow. I made him do some more songs with me because I was just so excited to be playing on stage with him. So then a couple of years after that, I was doing a show in Colorado, and we were doing 50s, 60s, and Vegas. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we had both David and DJ? Because David was in my band at the time. I had a rockabilly band called Crown Electric Company, and David was my drummer in that band. And we thought it would be neat to have DJ there as well, because David and DJ had not played on stage together since about 1978. I think there was a special concert for Elvis, and DJ and David played together on stage for that, but they hadn't been together on stage since then. So we got them together on stage for this show out in Colorado, and it was great fun.
Amazing. I just get the biggest kick out of it. We still run into people, producers and things like that go, yeah, do you know DJ's son David Fontana? And Pete's like, yeah, he used to play in my band.
I've been friends with him for many, many years.
Yeah. We still have several CDs available at the Crown Electric Company. If you'd like to purchase one, just send us an email. We'll send you one of the CDs with David Fontana playing as Pete's drummer in the background in the whole Crown Electric.
We had a couple CDs while we were a Crown Electric Company. We signed a brief record deal with LHP Records in England, and we had 2 CDs on that label. We did Crown Electric Company, our first rockabilly CD, with a couple of original songs on there, and then we did a Salute to Elvis called Still the King. So yes, those two are still available if you want to look into them. So
yeah, definitely. Just let us know if you'd like a copy, write to us, and we will get you hooked up with that. So also, as our tribute to DJ Fontana, Pete put together a fantastic video of interviews and things. So it's really, really cool to hear DJ's voice and get his perspective and hear Elvis introduce him from the stage. And I believe that's how the video kicks off. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah. Before we get to the video, I was fortunate when DJ was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He was inducted in he was the last of Elvis's sidemen. He and Bill Black were the last of Elvis's sidemen to be inducted in. Crown Electric Company actually had a gig in Nashville the night before. So we got done with our gig and got in the car and drove to Cleveland from Nashville and spent some time with David's dad. And I think DJ was very touched that David came up to see him. And David's brother Jeff was with us, so it was myself, David Fontana, Jeff Fontana, and our guitar player Terry Fullwider. And so the 4 of us kind of drove all night like the Blue Moon Boys, I guess, all did. Although we had air conditioner in our car. But got there and got a chance to meet Little Anthony and the Imperials and Wanda Jackson and Jeff Beck and a couple of the guys from Metallica who were also getting inducted in the Hall of Fame. So it was really neat. It was a lot of fun. It was neat to see DJ get inducted. Scotty was still with us at the time, and Scotty came down to be with DJ, sat down there with him at the table with him so that he wouldn't be down there by himself, because Bill Black's no longer with us, but he had died several years before. But Scotty was still with us at the time, so he came and was there with DJ, so DJ wouldn't be by himself. So I thought that was very touching, and it was nice to see them down there sharing stories with each other and laughing at some of the things that they were talking about. So
amazing. So on top of everything else, you got to be there when DJ was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that was a neat experience. It was a very neat experience.
So cool.
Yep. But without further ado, I do have just a short interview with DJ where he talks about meeting Elvis and how he met Elvis and how he got started and what made their union so successful. So we'd like to leave you with that here again this week with TCB Radio, and salute to DJ Fontana. We've lost a great musician this week.
Well, the first time I met Elvis, actually, it was on the Louisiana Hayride. It was late 1954. I wasn't working with him. I was working on the Hayride. And the Louisiana Hayride, of course, everybody knows, was a show now like the Grand Ole Opry is today. Except that it was a stepping stone. Everybody that was on the Opry later started at the Hayride. Slim Whitman, Jim Reeves, Elvis Presley, and it goes on and on. Nat Stuckey, and it goes on and on with the country artists. Webb Pierce, you know, they were all on that stage at about the same time. In fact, we worked a lot of country shows early, and Elvis was the only. Well, I think he called himself country at the time, but he wasn't really a country artist. He wasn't a rock artist. I don't know what the heck you'd call him. He was right in the middle of everybody, you know. He was like a mixture of gospel songs, rockabilly songs. He learned out of Memphis, you know. So they said, we're going to bring this guy in called Elvis Presley. I said, is that his real name? I was talking to the management. They said, well, yeah, that's his real name. I said, well, he might make it with that name or get thrown out of town, you know, one of the two. And they come in and, because I was like playing staff on like a Saturday night hayride. It's all it was one night a week. And Scotty said, you know, you want to do these 2 or 3 songs with us? I said, well, yeah. They only had about 2 or 3 songs. That's all they knew in the first place. And I said, well, let's go out in the dressing room and talk about it. And just talk about it. And it was Bill Black and Scotty Moore and Elvis. And Elvis played his own rhythm, you know, that rhythm guitar. And he played really good rhythm. And then, of course, Bill was doing a slap bass and Scotty Echoplex guitar. And I sat there and I said, well, man, this sound is so good. Why should I go in there and clutter it up? You know, what can I do? I'll help, but I don't want to mess with their deal. So I just played a backbeat for them, just real straight ahead, no fills, no nothing, and somehow it worked. And he had tried some other drummers, but he wasn't happy with them. He didn't dislike them, but it just didn't work. And like I say, I just learned to stay out of their way, and that's why it worked, I think.
We'd also like to thank Lee Douglas of Old Time Rock and Roll, always found at www.oldtimernr.com, for converting our show to iTunes. We appreciate you, Lee. Be sure to check out Lee's fantastic site and listen to his weekly shows, all oldies music with no commercials. TCB Radio Network is strictly a fan publication, not affiliated in any way with Elvis Presley Enterprises or any of its affiliates or subsidiaries. Please visit us online at tcbradionetwork.com. All trademarks, product names, company names, and logos mentioned are the properties of their respective owners. All opinions stated within do not necessarily reflect the opinions of anyone else, and certainly not Elvis Presley Enterprises.
Still the King, our theme song for TCB Radio Network podcast, was written by Shane Douglas, produced by Terry Fullwider at Blue Spot Studios, and performed by Peter Alden and his band, Crown Electric Company, featuring David Fontana, son of Elvis Presley's original drummer, DJ Fontana, on drums.
And Elvis Presley is still the king. Well, he's still the king.